Okay, you guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to edit a portrait in Adobe Lightroom. I'm basically going to take you through my entire portrait editing process from start to finish. We're going to use a photo that I've shot very recently, and I'm going to do all my editing in Adobe Lightroom, but at the end, we're going to take the photo and put it into Evoto AI, and we're going to do some AI skin retouching. So this should be a pretty interesting video, and it'll just let you see a little bit about my thought process when I'm editing portraits. Okay, so let's dive in. We're going to take this raw image. Like I said, I shot this recently in the studio here. And with Adobe Lightroom opened up, as long as we're in this top tab, the library tab, I can actually just take the photo and just drop it right in. Okay. Now, once we drop it in like that, at the bottom right here, we'll just hit import. And there we go. Photos in. Now, keep in mind when you're in Adobe Lightroom, the like 95% of what you're going to do, like basically everything we're going to do is actually over here in the develop module. Okay, so library is where you start when you import your images, and we can organize images and we can rate them, and it's called culling when you go through the pictures and decide what stays and what should get thrown out. But when we actually are ready to start editing, we're going to hop over one to the develop module over here. Okay. And then once we're here, this is where we get to see all the tools that we have at our disposal. Okay. Now, this isn't a tutorial where I'm taking you through every single thing and saying this does this, this does that, this does that. We're not doing that. This is my process. This is what I do for photo editing. So the first thing I like to do, once the photo's in, I always go for my white balance, okay? And there's a couple of ways to do this. If you click over here where it says as shot, you're gonna get a little drop-down menu, okay? Now, if you shot in RAW, you're gonna get to see all of your different white balance options, and we can change the white balance here. Okay, now if you shot in JPEG, you're only going to get to see as shot or auto, and I believe a custom as well, but you won't have access to all of this stuff. So you really do want to shoot your portraits in RAW if you have the ability to do that. That way you have access to all of these white balance things, and you can really customize and change it and fine tune your picture. Okay, so as shot looks like this. What I actually like to do is I just like to scroll through and see what each does, just because it's nice to know. So as shot looks like this. Auto, oh, okay, so auto cools it off quite a bit. Very interesting. Personally, I actually like this a little bit cooler, so I'm gonna make note of that. Daylight's warm, a little warmer. Cloudy, pretty warm. I know for sure I'm probably not gonna like any of these guys, but just so you can see it. I'm going to go back to auto for a second, and then I'm going to do two more things to show you guys. So, yeah, and then custom would be, okay, so as shot, a little bit warm for my taste, so auto, I don't mind. Now, if we go back to as shot, another thing you guys could do is if you swing over here to this little eyedropper tool, okay, if you click the eyedropper tool, you can actually just click on really anywhere in the image, and it'll take a read of that color and it'll white balance based on where you clicked. Okay, so typically I would start by looking for some sort of gray or white. So just to see what it does, I'm going to click on this gray area here. And yeah, that's not bad at all. Actually, I quite like that. That's not quite as cool as auto. It's somewhere in the middle. Let's go back to auto and see. Yeah, auto's a little bit cooler. And then if we go back here and hit that gray spot, let's go back to as shot. Wait, the eyedropper tool. Let's go back here. Okay, I don't mind that at all. But out of curiosity, we can just kind of click around and see. Like, look, if you click on the black, it'll do different things. If you click on the skin, well, that's not gonna work. But interesting. Okay, so you can see how much it changes when you click around. So like there's no rules with this stuff. It is definitely subjective. It's what you like. So I do recommend just clicking around. Don't think about it like, oh, I have to do this or I have to do that. I like to tell my students to just play around and see what things do. And either you like it or you don't like it. Okay. I will say pay attention to the skin tones. Like when you are making your white balance decision, you are trying to make sure that the skin looks as natural as possible and as real as it should be. So you don't want to click on a spot where the skin looks too yellow, or like that looks a little too warm for me. So I'm gonna go back. I'm just clicking around until it looks the way I think it should. Okay. Now one more time, I'm just gonna go back to auto just to see. Oh, I can make an argument for staying in auto. So I tend to do this when I'm editing. I do spend quite a bit of time in my white balance trying to make the right decision. And sometimes I just go back and forth until I'm happy. You know what? I like this. I'm going to stick with this white balance. Now, just so you know, you have other sliders down here. I'm not actually going to move them. Well, maybe I will. I'll undo it so you can see. But because I'm happy where I am. But if we wanted to add pinks or greens, you could move these sliders. I'm going to undo that. Command Z is your undo on a Mac. Okay, I'm on a Mac. And if you wanted to add coolness or warmth, just use this top slider here. Okay, I'm going to undo that as well because I was happy where I was. Now, after I'm set with my white balance, and keep in mind, you could always go back there and change it if you change your mind later. Then I'm going to go down here and look at exposure, okay? Just to see how it looks if I brighten it up just a smidge, okay? And that's not bad. I do think that down here needs some extra lift because we're getting into a little bit of shadowiness. So here's where I'm going to lift some shadows with this slider. Okay, so if you watch her jacket and her pants, even her hair and her hood, basically all the dark areas in the image are getting lifted when you do this, okay? I will say don't go crazy because that starts to look a little messy, maybe cartoony. I don't love that look of just really cranked shadows. Some people do this thing where they crank the shadows and they bring the highlights all the way down, and yeah, yikes. Yeah, don't do that. But just enough so that it brings back some detail in the clothes. Like that's pretty good. Right there. Okay. Now, for now, we'll come back. If we feel like we need more lift in this, we'll go grab a brush later and we'll paint it in. But this looks good to me for now, so we can move on. Another thing that I'll do is maybe just see if I want to add a little bit of contrast just for some pop, but not too much. There are times where I'll go the other direction with my contrast and I'll bring it down like this just to take the edge off. It depends on the image. On this one, actually, I could argue to keep the contrast down a smidge. Let's see. Yeah, maybe -5. I might do minus contrast just a little bit. Okay. So that's something you'll play around with. Don't go crazy. Like, don't go like that. That's not going to work. That's going to make your image really messy and weird. If you go too much on contrast, see what the blacks do. They just get really crushed and now your skin color is changing. So you do want to be kind of subtle with this, but I actually didn't mind taking this down to about -5. It even did add some lift to the shadows there. Okay, so I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to show you my before and after. So this is where we started. Here's where we're at so far. So I'm happy right now. This has actually come a long way just with those tiny little adjustments. So again, before and after. Okay. One thing I also will test out is clarity. Clarity gives it like a little bit more pop and a little more sharpness. You don't want to go crazy because it can start to look fake and cartoony as well, and grungy. So yeah, that's way too extreme. But what's really nice is like somewhere around 4 or 5 or 6 just to add a little pop. So I'm gonna do something like 4. Whoa, it went to 7. I'm gonna stick with +4. And now let's check out my before and after. There's before, there's after. Yeah, so I'm happy with that. Now, just to talk about skin tones for a second, what I tend to do is I either desaturate a little bit or I'm going to pinpoint the orange of a skin because I don't like skin that looks too orange. In my opinion, I want to get rid of some of the orange or the oversaturatedness of the skin. So to my eyes, keeping in mind this is subjective stuff, this is looking a little orange. So there's a few options. We can take the saturation down just a little bit. Now, keeping in mind, if I do that, it's doing it to the whole image, okay? I could put that back and I could try the vibrance and it'll do something very similar, but keep in mind it'll do it to the whole image. So -10, kind of subtle, but I quite like that. It is quite a big difference now. So before, after, and if I zoom in a little bit on the skin, yeah, you can see it really took the edge off some of that orange. Okay. So I'm gonna leave it with that. That I'm happy with. So I went a little bit in the minus with my vibrance. Okay, so to me, I'm happy. I'm done in this area for now. I'm gonna move on. So my next step, there's this place called the tone curve right here. Now, there are some things I would do for curves if I felt necessary. In this image, I don't feel like I need to do it, but if I wanted more contrast, what I tend to do is make what's called an S curve, and I bring the mids up just to give a little pop to the mids, and then I bring the shadows down, which crushes the shadows just a little bit. This is just a tiny little S curve, what's called an S curve, because you see the line becomes an S, and you bring the highlights up. And it adds a little contrast. I don't actually think it needed it. I'm just showing you guys so you can see this S curve, because this is a common move if you wanted to add contrast to an image. But keep in mind, it will affect the whole image again. So it's not just her face, it is the entire image. So this is the thing. You could go in and do that on any color here, okay? And you don't even have to add the S curve. You could just start adding color to shadows or pull out color to the shadows to really start looking at some stylization to your image. I'm not going to do any of this because I'm not ready for it. And I'm going to go back here and I'm going to take these out. And let's move on. What I do want to do is this HSL area, okay? Color mixer. So this color mixer has what's called HSL. HSL is hue, saturation, and luminance. Now, hue I'm not worried about. Saturation is where I'm going to go. This one's important because what this does is it allows you to pinpoint specific colors. And we can bring the saturation down or up for those specific colors. So if you had, for example, maybe if she was wearing like a ball cap, say she had a blue ball cap on, and we wanted to make the blue a little bit deeper and richer, we could pinpoint the blue and add more saturation and really, rich up that blue ball cap. But in this case, what I'm looking at is her skin, and I'm thinking I'm going to bring down the orange just a little bit, just to pull out some more orange from the skin, just to desaturate it a little bit. And the nice thing about this is it doesn't affect the backdrop, okay? It really is just affecting the places that have orange. And so basically her face and her skin. Okay, so I'm just pulling out a little bit extra, not a crazy amount. I'm not going like that because that's going to make it black and white. But I'm just pulling out enough so that I don't feel like there's orange that bothers me. About there. No, let's bring back a little bit extra. Maybe -10, 11, -11. Okay. That's pretty good. I'm going to stick with that for now. So here's before, here's after. So now that we've done this, wow, you can really see how warm and orange this was in the beginning. This is another reason why you do want to make sure you shoot in RAW for stuff like this, because yeah, because look how it was way oranger than we even thought. Now that we've seen it with the orange removed, that's crazy, actually. Okay, now that I'm zoomed in and looking at it, I actually am going to go back up and I'm going to take that clarity off. I don't think it needed it. I'm taking it off just because I don't want it to be too grungy looking. Her eyes are really sharp. I shot on a really nice camera with really great autofocus and her eyes are perfectly tack sharp. So I don't really want that clarity added at all. So yeah. And that tends to happen when you're editing. You're going to add things and then you're going to move on and then you're going to look and analyze and you might make some other decisions. You'll go back, you'll take things away. It's just, this is part of the process. Okay. So now that I saw it, yeah, let's take away that clarity and let's move on. My next step will be, I don't really need to do anything else here. Actually, let's zoom out and let's see. I'm not going to crop yet. I'm not going to make any cropping decisions just yet because I'm going to wait till the very end. I want a complete photo ready to go before I do any sort of cropping. So we'll wait on that. Let's see. I'm pretty happy with this. I think what we could do now is we're going to pop this into Evoto, okay? What we're going to do is do some skin retouching. So what we can do is right click this, assuming you have your Evoto installed on your laptop. I right click, I'm going to click edit in, and then we have a few options here. You could send this to Photoshop to do skin retouching. But I'm a huge fan of Evoto AI, and I'll show you why in a second here. But let's just click Edit in Evoto Photo Editor. Click Edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. Yes, so click Edit. And there we go. Okay, then the image automatically pops up in our Evoto. Okay, so there's a fair amount to unpack in Evoto, but I'm not deep diving every single thing. What I'm doing in this video is just showing you guys my process, okay? So the first thing that I'm looking at is just to get rid of inconsistencies on the skin. Now, if you were in a Photoshop or if you kept it in Lightroom, you'd have to go, piece by piece, bit by bit, and use your stamps and clone it out, or your brushes. We're not going to have to do that anymore in Evoto because they've got sliders. They're AI sliders, and we can actually just remove the whole bit with one foul swoop of our slider. So that actually did quite a bit. Now, what's important in this area, it's called freckles and acne. Here, let's take it off again. Okay, we're in this little tab called portrait retouching. Okay, so this is where you're gonna get all these AI face or skin retouching tools. It's a fabulous little section, and I can't say how much I love this. Freckles and acne. So if we slide it all the way up, you can see that it took basically everything off. Now, what I tend to do is I go to this freckles one because I don't actually want to remove any freckles because that's real, that's natural. So I actually bring that one back to 0 now that that effect is applied, and I just keep the acne slider all the way up. Okay. Now, depending on the image and the person and what you're trying to go for, how slick of a look you're trying to go for, you could keep this all the way up, but you could back it down a little bit too. Because if you back it down, it will look a little bit more realistic. It could get too fake and phony if you go all the way up. So I'm going to back it down about here. So 77 is where I'm going to go, and that's not bad to me. Okay. This little guy here, where my mouse is view before only, if I click that, you can see the before and after. Okay, pretty interesting. And I'm happy with that. So that saves a ton of time. If you ever had to do this stuff in Photoshop in the past, that could take, you could spend 20 minutes on a photo trying to remove this stuff. As you get faster, obviously, or as you get better, you could do it faster. Like I can do it in just a couple minutes. So now that we've done that, what I like to do is I like to add this reduce face shine slider. So watch the hot spots on her skin here. This is going to take the edge off. Yeah, and let's back it out a bit too, so you can see. I do like that. So you go like this. See, we got those big hotspots from the flash. Sometimes depending on the makeup, that can be more intense or not. I'm gonna keep it on. I like it at 100 in this scenario. It just takes the edge off of that. And also, what's nice is in the past I would have had to do that in Photoshop and brush that out. So just having that nice slider to do it is a pretty serious game changer. Okay, now another good one here. Well, you can see there's this face mole removal. Again, that's real and that's part of someone's look. So I wouldn't recommend doing that unless maybe they tell you they want you to. That's a conversation you may have to have with your client. But just so you can see, if you apply it, watch the nose there. There's one on the chin and one on the nose. So there it is. And if you hit that remover, the face mole remover, bam, it just takes it away. But this is part of her look, so let's leave it in. and it looks awesome, you know. One thing I would explore here, dark circles. So watch this. If we crank this all the way to the right, all the under eye stuff goes away. So this is going to also be subjective. You got to be careful. It doesn't look phony because people have stuff under their eyes. Everybody does. So you just have to decide how much to leave. Okay. But a little bit to take the edge off is not bad. If I was doing my own headshot or a portrait of myself, I just take the edge off a little bit. Okay. That looks good to me. Let's leave it there. Eye bags, if you watch the under eyes again, let's do this eye bag one. Okay, even more. But again, be careful. We want it to stay real. You don't want it to look fake or phony. I mean, it's clean, but it's not totally real. So we gotta find a happy medium. I'm gonna go about 37. Let's stick with that for a second. Let's look at our before. Okay, that has come a long way, and I'm very happy with this. Let's zoom out so we can see. Let's do a before. Yeah, you can still see a mega difference, and it's so easy with these sliders. Okay, so if we zoom back in, let's keep going. There's a ton of options. Not all of them are going to apply to this photo, but I'll just keep scrolling here. If there are forehead wrinkles, this one works really well. 11 lines works super well. Eye wrinkles, nasal, like there's a ton of stuff here. It's extremely good. I don't need any of these though. Tattoos, if you had a professional headshot for a client and they had tattoos on their arms, for example, this tattoo removal is magic. Just one click, tattoos on the arm is gone. It's crazy good. Okay, let's keep going. One thing I do use, this facial skin area. So even dodge and burn. I don't always do that one, but I do like the sculpt dodge and burn because that just kind of adds intensity to the shadows on the face and then the highlights, and it just gives it a good contrasty sculpt. So let's move this all the way to the right, and you can see what that looks like. I'll zoom in just a little bit. So sculpt, dodge, and burn. Yeah. And that gives it more of a fashion-y, sort of portrait-y, slicker look. And you can decide how much of that you want, if you want to back it down a little bit. So here's none. Okay, and then here's full blast, which I don't even mind. I don't even mind full blast. I might keep it there, or maybe... Okay, how about... Okay, 61. Let's go with something like that. And again, here's before. Here's after. It's coming along so nice. Look how slick that is. Okay, now let's just keep going. I don't need any of this stuff. Textured smoothing, no, because I'm just really happy with where we're at now. We don't need to soften the skin anymore. It's looking great. One thing I do is skin tone AI unify face complexion. This one will do a better job of unifying these different colors. So if we go all the way to the right, check this out. So it just makes the skin more uniform. So there's no like, if you had, let's say for example, someone came in from the cold, it's winter time and there was, you know, a lot of red on their cheeks and stuff, this would actually get rid of that and unify it to the rest of the skin color. So let's see, what do I think? Do I like that? Here's none. Watch the bottom of her face, these shadowy areas. If I put it back on, yeah, I do like that. Maybe we'll just back it off a bit. Maybe about there. 78. Okay, I'm gonna keep that. I like it. You could do the same thing now with the skin. So AI unify body complexion. That's not bad. Let's back that off a bit. Yep, that looks good to me. So here's before. After. Yeah, okay, I'm really happy with all this stuff. This is awesome. Let's leave it at that for the Unify skin. This face one, now she's like, McLeod is a fantastic model and she's gorgeous. We don't need to do anything to her face, but just so you could see, you can actually do some reshaping, widening. There's a lot we can do here. So be very careful because you don't want to change a person too much. But if you had to do something to take the edge off, or maybe one side of a person's face isn't so symmetrical, or, there's many reasons why I guess you could do this stuff. There's a lot of interesting options here to play with. So you're going to want to spend some time in this section. In this case, because I think McLeod is killing it, we don't have to touch any of this stuff. Now here, okay, this stuff we can play in. So facial expression, just so you can see, we don't need to do this, but this gummy smile is actually pretty funny. You can enhance the smile. Watch that upper lip. Okay, we'll take it away. Gentle smile, it adds more smile. That's actually interesting. Look, if we take that off, if you wanted to add a little bit of a smile, that's fascinating. I might actually leave that on. So here's before, after. It's just like a smidge of an extra smile. I like it. I'm going to leave that on. I think that that's fascinating that we can do that. Okay. We're getting pretty close here. Eyes. If you want to add some brightness to the eyes, I do. So I'm going to add just a little bit. If we zoom in a little bit, watch the catch lights in her eyeballs here. You're going to notice that gets a little bit of extra pop when we add that, and the whites in the eyes too. You got to be careful. If you go full blast, it's going to look a little fake. So just a little bit for some pop. Okay. The eye whites, iris, eye reflection, lots of stuff you can play with here. Okay. If she was wearing glasses, this remove glasses glare one is crazy good. No glasses, obviously, so I can't show you that for now. But if you do have glare in someone's eyeglasses, that one is magical. Okay. This one's interesting. We can add catch lights to her eyes. If you go through these guys, watch her eyeballs here. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit. If you wanted to add more pop and make it look like there were more lights in the studio, look, you can add. This one looks like there's a reflector at the bottom. That's interesting, actually. Let's see. Here's before. Here's after. Okay, so let's see. If I keep that one with the bottom reflector, if we're zoomed out. No, you know what? In my opinion, it adds too much. Let's take it away. I'm going to go with none. But it's very interesting. You can play with that stuff. Super duper interesting. Let's move on. We're actually getting close to being complete here. Like, I'm pretty darn happy with this image. We've come such a long way. There are makeup options you can play with, highlights, contour. I don't think we need any of this. Her makeup was awesome to begin with anyways. But if you wanted to, this section exists and it's really cool. Hair reshape. This I'll show you, but we probably don't need to do much. Hair part line. Okay, so you can watch the hairline here. It just filled it in a little bit. That's not bad. I could live with that. Let's leave that in. Top hair volume. So let's back out here. Top hair volume. Interesting. Here's before. Here's with a little volume. You know what? A little volume is not bad. Let's leave that. Here's before. Here's after. Let's keep a little bit in. Not bad. There's side hair volume. If you watch the sides of her hair, if you wanted to add volume like that. That's not bad either. I might actually leave that in. Just for extra. Yeah. Just extra pop. Okay, hairline. Nope, I don't want to touch that. Okay, but that's an interesting one. If you ever had to fix someone's hairline, that could work very well for you. Okay, stray hair removals. Let's see if these little guys, if this takes them out. Let's back it off and see. This is more for like when there's frizzies all around the top of the person's head. In this case, it's probably not necessary. Yeah, well, it's doing it to the hood here. Let's see. Okay. No, that starts to look a little fake to me. So that's an interesting one if you ever have a lot of stray hairs without a hood like that. In this case, I don't need it. Okay, let's move on. So now that I'm happy with the skin retouching, here, let's just do another before and after. So here's before. after. What a crazy good job. I'm just so impressed with this program. I love it. I do all my skin retouching in here. I almost don't touch Photoshop anymore. Just it's so quick, it's so effective, and the fact that I could copy and paste this stuff to other images too, it's so good. I just can't say that enough times. Okay. Now I'm pretty happy with this. There isn't a lot more that I'm gonna do. Like we're getting really close to a completed image here. One thing I'll show you though is if you ever wanted to change your backdrops. Now, I don't actually want to do this because I quite like my backdrop here. I have a nice canvas that I was using, but if you ever wanted to change it, they have this one touch backdrop changer in this backdrop section over here. Okay. If I click, for example, gray, okay, it can completely change the backdrop. Now, again, I don't want to do that, but you can see how well it works. It does the cutout and it puts the new backdrop in. Here's this fabricy one that they have. Now I like mine better because it's real. But if you ever did need to change your backdrops, this does a crazy good job. Okay, just one click. Look at all the options they have. Also, up in this personal area, you could actually import your own backdrops too if you had stuff saved from Google, or maybe you shot your own backdrops in the studio to use later. So that's a really cool option. And again, it's one click and it puts it in. Another cool one is transparent. So if you needed to remove someone from a backdrop, let's say they had an ad, maybe they needed to put it into another program and change the background. So this gives them that quick, clean cutout, and you could send them just themselves cut out. Okay, if you're sending this to a client or whatever. So that's a good one. I'm going to undo that. I actually, like I said, love my backdrop. At this point, I'm pretty happy with the image. I think we're so close. I think it's cropping time now. So let's go over to the crop. The first thing I want to do is, instead of having to worry about brushing this out or something like, or clone stamping it out, we have enough headroom here because I shot it pretty wide. Let's just drag it in this way, and then that takes care of that issue. Okay. Now, one thing I'll mention is this is going to live on social media. That's the first intention with this picture. So I tend to make my cropping decisions more when I post. Okay. If this picture was going to live on a website, or it was going to go for print or something different, then I would start to think more like, okay, do I like this hand the way it's cut off, or do I want to bring this up a little bit so that I don't have a cut off hand? And here's what that looks like. Okay. So you can decide, you can make those types of decisions, but something that I'll mention is that I want to keep it as wide as possible because I really do want to make this cropping decision on social media. I think I'm ready to export. Now, there's one thing I'm going to mention before I hit export. When I finish an image, I like to give a client a black and white and a color image. I love, love, love black and white portraits. It's one of my favorite things. So I'll always export the color version first, and then I'll go back and we'll make a black and white. So that's what we're going to do. So export, okay? Because it's going to social media, I'm going to hit this web size one because I don't need it to be a huge, massive size. If I wanted it to be a giant size for print, I would choose one of my TIFF options, or even JPEG full size does a good job, but those files are huge. In this case, it's social media, so I'm going to hit web, okay? Save it out. You can choose where to save it out to if you had a hard drive plugged in. I'm just going to send it to my desktop. There's not a lot on my desktop right now anyways. You could change the name if you needed to, but let's just hit export. And here's the image. Let's do full screen and see what we got. Yeah, okay. That's awesome. Such a great shot. I mean, McLeod killed it in this photo shoot. The lighting was really cool. I was really happy with how I lit this. It's just overall this black outfit she's got and that cool gray canvas. It's a badass shot. I like the lighting. But now with the skin retouching that we did in Evoto, like that's slick. This makes me really, really happy. Okay. So now that we have that, the last thing that I will do is I'll always make a black and white. Okay, so we go back. This is so simple. I just go back up to this color adjustments panel. Keep in mind when you're in Evoto, this is set up in layers. So when we go back up to something like color adjustments, we're just not seeing the face portrait retouching just because it's on a layer underneath. But as soon as I go back there, then you see the retouching. Okay, so if I go up here, don't freak out. You're not going to see the retouching, but I'm going to go to saturation and I'm going to bring the saturation down. And that's all I need to do for making a black and white. Okay, so if I come back down here to retouching to add that back in, yes, cool. Okay, here's before. So here's color after. That's a cool black and white. Now, one thing I'll mention is when I do go to black and white, I do tend to like adding a little bit more pop. So I do add a little bit more contrast, just a little bit. Even 10 or 12 is fine. Let's go with 11 right in the middle. And then maybe a little clarity, because on black and white images, a little clarity just for pop, not very much. 1, 2, or 3. Let's go 3. That's nice. Okay. Love, love, love. Okay, export, and then let's see what it looks like. And then we'll A/B the color and the black and white. There we go. Oh yeah, black and white. It has to be black and white. I love that so much. Okay. Well, I don't know. I mean, if I was gonna post it, I don't know. I'll send this to her. We'll see what she thinks as well. Everyone, it's subjective. Everyone likes different things. I love the black and white though. It's so cool, and it's got so much pop now with a little bit of contrast and a little bit of that clarity. Here, we'll full screen it. Love that. Okay, and look at how nice the skin is. Evoto did such a good job. It was incredibly easy. It's still not like it's not total. It's not fake. It's yeah, it's retouched, but it's still real. It's very, very slick. I'm so happy with this shot. Okay, now one thing, we'll go back. If this little mark on the arm was bugging me, in Evoto, you can still do your basic healing brush retouching. So what I would do is I would grab this little healing tool, and it's pretty simple. Let's bring the size down just a little bit, and we're just gonna paint over it, and that'll get rid of it. Very, very simple, and it's gone. And if you see any other little things you want to get rid of, just click on it while we're in here. Okay. Maybe while we're in, let's take care of this guy here. And it's gone. Okay. So if that was bugging me, now it's gone. Well, you know, let's take these guys out too. No. Let's leave that. That never popped out to my eyes in the first place. I'm going to leave it at that, and let's hit OK. And we'll re-export that. Okay. And there it is. Beautiful. Okay. Now, one final thing I'm going to show you guys for this tutorial. If we're in Lightroom, let's go back to Lightroom. So this is where we started, okay? One thing I'll do after I do all that stuff, all my white balance and exposure things in Lightroom, and then I hop into Evoto and I do the skin retouching. One thing I like to do just to see is I do have a whole bunch of presets, okay? I have presets that I bought over the years, like vintagey things and things with more fade. You can see what it's doing. These things are pretty heavy-handed, and I'm not the biggest fan of presets. I like my style better. I tend to go for a more I go for more clean and crisp and real, but I still like pop. So I definitely have my style or my vibe to my edits, and it's not as heavy-handed. I'm a little more subtle. But if you ever wanted to, you can just go on YouTube, Google, even Instagram and TikTok, and just type in anything to do with Lightroom presets, and you could find a whole world of this stuff. I've definitely paid too much money over the years to get presets, and in the end, these days I don't even use them. But you know, there is some cool stuff. Like, I'll admit, these ones with fades, these are kind of cool. But if it goes online and for example onto my Instagram, it just doesn't fit any of my other work. It would be so different. But if I ever felt like I wanted to change it up and really have something just completely different, you know, I'll always go over here and take a look. So just so you guys know, you do have a preset section that lives here. And if you were to buy your presets, you would just hit this plus button and you could go import, or you could create a preset. Okay. Creating presets, I'm saving for another video. That'll be its own thing. But just so you know, it does live here. Okay, you guys. That was an interesting journey. I hope that was helpful for you to see the way that I do these things. And I don't go crazy, but there are some really specific things that I do to my photo edits. And look, this is where it started. If we hit the before, so we really did come a long way on this. And then let's go see our final over here, our final exports. Remember, we had a color and a black and white. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful for you guys, and we will see you in the next editing video.